"Oh, I am quite resolved," declared Marina Pelham, fanning herself amid the bright circle of young ladies in the drawing-room. "I shall wed the very first man who walks through that door. Duke or footman, young or grey, handsome or plain, the first man. I vow it. For I am 21 and unmarried and entirely overlooked, and I have decided that fate may simply choose for me, since the gentlemen of this county plainly will not." The young ladies shrieked with delight, for it was that giddy hour of a ball when the dancing has paused and the laughter runs ahead of sense. Marina swept them a mock grave curtsy, her painted silk fan spread before her like a herald's banner, and at the very height of the laughter, at the very instant the words left her lips, the drawing-room door swung open, and the Duke of Darnwell walked in. The laughter died as if a hand had closed over it. He was tall and dark and unhurried, in a coat that had cost more than the house, and he stopped just inside the door with the faint, arrested air of a man who has walked into the middle of a sentence and suspects it was about him. His grey eyes moved over the suddenly silent circle of young ladies and came to rest, with a dry and dawning amusement, upon Marina Pelham, who stood frozen with her fan half lowered and the colouring from her face. "I appear," said Hugo, Duke of Darnwell, "to have made an entrance." He did not, of course, know what he had walked into. But he was a man of quick wit and quicker eyes, and the guilty silence of a roomful of laughing girls, the stricken face of the one in the middle, the way every gaze flicked from him to her, and back he assembled the matter in the space of 3 heartbeats, and his mouth curved. "I have the most curious sensation," he said, advancing into the room with grave deliberation, "that I have arrived at a particular moment. Will some kind soul enlighten me? Miss Pelham," whispered one of the girls, and then clapped her hand over her mouth. "Miss Pelham," he bowed to her, perfectly, "you have the look of a lady to whom something has just happened. I confess I am consumed with curiosity." Marina, scarlet now to the roots of her hair, would have given the whole of her modest fortune to sink through the floor. But she was, beneath the mortification, a spirited creature, and she had never in her life been able to leave a thing unsaid for long. "Your Grace will laugh at me," she said. "Almost certainly," he agreed, "but I shall do it kindly, if that is any comfort, and I shall not leave this room until I know. I warn you, I am the most obstinate man in 3 counties." So one of the bolder girls, half mortified and half delighted, told him. She told him of the laughing vow, the resolution to wed the first man through the door, the fan flourished, the oath sworn, and the door opening, on that very word, upon the Duke of Darnwell himself. A silence followed the telling. Marina kept her eyes fixed upon the carpet and prayed for an earthquake. The Duke was quiet for a moment. Then, to the astonishment of the entire room, he crossed to where Marina stood, and he did not laugh, or not unkindly. He regarded her with a grave amusement that had something else moving underneath it, something she could not read. "Then it seems," he said, "that I am, by your own solemn oath, sworn before all these witnesses, to be your husband. A vow is a vow, Miss Pelham. I should be the last man to make a lady forsworn." The girls gasped. Marina's head came up. "Your Grace cannot be serious. It was a jest, a foolish, idle jest." "Was it?" He tilted his head. "And here I had taken you for a woman of her word. You vowed it most resolutely. Duke or footman, you said. I distinctly heard the housekeeper repeating it in the hall. And I, Miss Pelham, am, by the cruelty of timing, the Duke. I do not see how either of us is to escape it with our honour intact." His grey eyes were dancing now. "Unless, of course, you mean to tell me you find me so very disagreeable that you would break a sacred oath rather than suffer my company. In which case you wound me deeply, and I shall require a quadrille by way of apology." It was outrageous. It was entirely improper. And Marina Pelham, who had spent 3 seasons being overlooked against the wall while prettier and richer girls were led out to dance, found, to her own great confusion, that her mortification had begun to give way to something perilously close to delight. You are teasing me, your grace, she said. I am, he admitted, a little, but only a little. Will you dance with me, Miss Pelham, and we shall consider, over the course of it, how two people are to extract themselves from a vow sworn before a dozen witnesses and a fan. She danced with him. She could hardly have done otherwise, with the whole room watching. And somewhere in the figures of the quadrille, between his dry observations and her quick retorts, the mortification fell away entirely, and what remained was the strange and dawning discovery that she had never in her life been so well matched in conversation, and that the Duke of Darnwell, whom every mother in the county had failed to catch for 3 years, was looking at her plain, overlooked Marina Pelham as though she were the only diverting thing he had encountered in a very long while. He called the next day. The county reeled. He called the day after that, and walked with her in the garden, and let her win an argument about poetry that he had no intention of conceding, except that her cheeks coloured so prettily when she was right. He came to understand, across those calls, the thing he had glimpsed in the silent drawing-room, that here was a woman of wit and warmth whom the world had passed over for no better reason than that she had no great fortune and stood too long against the wall, and that he, who could have had his pick of the season's diamonds and had found every one of them a bore, had walked through a door at exactly the right moment and into the company of the one woman who could make him laugh. I must confess something to you, he told her on the fourth such call, as they stood by the long windows of her father's modest drawing-room. I have been keeping up the jest, the vow, the oath, the honour of the thing because it amused me, and because it allowed me to call upon you without troubling to invent a reason. But I find the jest has become inconvenient. Marina's heart, which begun rather foolishly to hope, contracted. I quite understand, she said quickly, lifting her chin. Of course your grace was never truly bound by a girl's silly. You misunderstand me. He took the fan from her hand, the very painted silk fan she had flourished that first night, which she carried still, and he turned it over thoughtfully. It has become inconvenient, Miss Pelham, because I no longer wish to be jesting. A man may pretend a great while to be held to a vow he means to laugh his way out of, but somewhere between the quadrille and the argument about poetry, I stopped pretending. I find I do not wish to be released from the oath at all. I find I should like, more than I have wished for anything in a great many idle years, for it to be true. She stared at him. Your grace. Hugo, he said, I think, if I am to be the first man through your door and your husband by sacred vow, you had better call me Hugo. He set the fan down and took her hands instead. You laughed and swore to wed the first man through that door, Marina, and fate, in a fit of unusual good sense, sent you me. I have spent 3 seasons being hunted by women who wanted a duke. You did not want a duke. You wanted, by your own account, to stop being overlooked, and the wicked truth is that the moment you stopped trying to be chosen, you became the only woman in England I have ever wished to choose. Marry me, not because of the jest, because of everything that has happened since the jest. Because I walked through a door, and there you were, and I have not stopped being glad of it for a single hour since. The fan slipped from the table to the floor between them, and neither of them looked at it. You are certain, she said unsteadily, that you are not still teasing me? I have never, said the Duke of Darnwell, been less inclined to tease in my life. Though I reserve the right to tease you about it constantly, for the next 50 years, at every dinner, until our grandchildren are sick of the tale of how their grandmother swore an oath to a fan and accidentally caught a duke. A laugh broke from her half-disbelief, half a joy so sudden it was nearly painful, and she pressed her free hand to her mouth, and when she lowered it she was smiling at him the way she had not dared smile at any man in 3 long seasons of standing against the wall. Then yes, she said, yes, Hugo, I will hold you to your vow since you insist upon being held to it, and I will marry you. But I warn you, I shall tell the tale rather better than you do, and in my telling, you will be far less dignified. I should expect nothing less, said the Duke, from the woman who proposed to me before I had got both feet through the door, and he raised her hands to his lips, and the laughing vow that the whole county had thought the most ridiculous thing of the season became, before the year was out, the truest match anyone could remember. They were married in the spring, and the painted silk hung framed in the hall of Darnwell for the rest of their lives, and the Duke told the tale at every opportunity badly, and the Duchess corrected him, and the whole table laughed, and somewhere in the laughing it always came round to the same place, that a careless jest, sworn at the giddy ball by an overlooked girl who had given up on being chosen, had opened a door, and a man had walked through it, and neither of them had ever once regretted that he came in when he did. I am still not certain, Marina would say, in their old age by the fire, that you did not stand listening at the door until I made my vow, and only then walk in. And the Duke of Darnwell, grey now and content, would only smile and turn the worn signet ring upon his finger and say, "My love, a gentleman never tells." But I will say this, of all the doors I have ever walked through in my life, I have never once been so glad of a single one. And she would take his hand, and the firelight would warm the two of them, and the fan would gleam upon the wall, and they would sit a while in the comfortable quiet of two people who had been, against all the wisdom of the world, exactly and laughingly right for one another.